Hey, good afternoon. Good Friday to you. My name is Michael Winn, Chief Digital Officer of Digital Ops, a division of RB Oppenheim Associates, and I'm joined today by my guest, Katie Lilly from Lilyfield Accounting Solutions.
Hello.
Glad to have you again on a Friday as we review the book Traction, Getting a Grip on Your Business Before Your Business Gets a Grip on You. I love this book, Katie. As we dive into this, it really starts to unpack that, like, you can actually have a plan to run your business and like structure.
Yeah, so I got the greatest compliment yesterday, and I don't even think she realized she did it. I was in a meeting with one of my employees, and she said, quote unquote, I just am starting to feel like we're so organized now. And I was like, excellent.
Yeah.
Because we actually had, because we were looking at our rocks list of things that we need to work on, and we're finding and carving out the time it takes to work on them versus just client service, because we have this awareness now of working on the business. So
yeah, I think that's awesome. True. And I think too, for businesses, especially small businesses that are in that, say 4 to 10, employee structure, this book is so solid to create a foundation, because I feel like small businesses fly by the seat of their pants so many times, So anyway, all right, so we're going to jump right into this. So chapter 4 is what we're going to talk about today, and that is the people component. And in this chapter, it's really kind of broken up into 2 big sections, if you will: having the right people and having them in the right seat. And so we'll go ahead and we'll jump right into picking the right people and making sure that you have the right people in place. And sort of within that, there are sort of 2 sort of measurables or kind of a layer or lens to look at the person through in an objective way. And that first lens would be your core values of your company, which we talked about in earlier chapters. And then a new concept that is introduced in this chapter, which is the people analyzer, which is kind of like a little grid that's basically based on your core values. And in the book, he uses a plus or minus or a plus/minus. So let's talk about, having the right people. And let's talk about the people analyzer, because we've spent a lot of time on the core values. So let's talk about the analyzer.
Right. So the analyzer is just what you're supposed to do is take your leadership team and run them through the people analyzer. And so you've got your core values, and you're just saying whether each person has that, demonstrates that core value, doesn't, or kind of does half the time doesn't, to see where you are. And the purpose of doing it like that at the beginning with your leadership team is, if the leadership team is all scoring negatives on a certain value, then maybe that core value really isn't a core value of yours. Yeah. Maybe it was one of those that you felt you should have, right? Yeah. We talked about that, the core value that you think you should have, but really isn't important, or isn't something that you're really wanting to focus on. And so once you've run it through your leadership team and you feel confident that you've got more pluses than minuses, then that would be your core value people analyzer that you would use. You would sit down and have that in the interview process as you're trying to interview someone, asking questions that are going to bring forth whether they kind of exhibit that particular value or not. And that's what I love about it, because you'll get so many resumes and they look great on paper. On paper, yeah. They look great on paper. They check all the boxes. They know QuickBooks. They're super organized, whatever. And then they walk in. And they're a total nut job. Yeah. Or they don't laugh at your joke. And they don't laugh at your jokes. That was funny, right. Yeah. So, but so you've got to be, and it doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It just means they're going to fit somewhere else better. Right. And you have to just remember that in the back of your head. So I feel like, I don't know, just having an all-female business, I have found that sometimes it is a unique thing, that sometimes women are feel bad. They don't want to hurt someone's feelings.
Sure.
Right? And so we may hire someone who we're like, sure, they might be good. Maybe we can change them kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this eliminates that. It's like, no, they didn't exhibit, these core values.
Mm-hmm.
And that just means they're going to fit someplace else better.
Right. Well, in the book, and I want to clarify for those of you who haven't read the book, the grading system. So you have the column of, let's say, your first core value, and I'll use the book's example. Be humbly confident, and then in that row you would have the person's name, and their grade would be a plus, which means they demonstrate that core value most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
or a minus, which means they never demonstrate that core value, or a plus/minus, which means that they demonstrate that some of the time. Right? So it's all the time, none of the time, some of the time. Right? So you get pluses and minuses. And then, again, like a second example of a core value used in the book was grow or die. Again, shows some of the time, none of the time, so on. Another core value, help first. Another core value, do the right thing. Another core value, do what you say. Mm-hmm. Execute, basically, right? So having that leadership person, take that person, look at those very core, it's usually the core values, like we said, is typically 4 to 6 max. It's in that sweet spot there. So it's really quick and easy. It's not like you have this, 20 questionnaire of, people analyzer. It's just basic, you know?
Right.
And I feel like what you're talking about is almost like emotional intelligence.
Yeah, because they're not going to make it to the interview process if they don't already have the criteria, like the skill set that you need. So now you're in the interview process and now you're looking for all that soft stuff. Right.
Yeah. So, okay. So you've kind of had your leadership team, you've gone through this people analyzer, and the one piece that Gino brings up in this is, what do you do when you've done this and you find someone who's not meeting the bar, And so he introduces the idea of the 3-strike rule, which is really accountability at its core. And I think it's important because, the way he suggests is that, you sit down with the person on their first strike, you talk to them, explain where the error occurred or kind of what the issue was. You give them 30 days, to make that adjustment. And then you follow that course 3 times, which I think is interesting because I know I've been in businesses before where, again, obviously if it's a strict policy, violation, like they're caught doing something that's illegal or unethical, you can terminate immediately. But we're talking about a 3-strike rule that's related to your core values or related to their just job functionality, which is really the right seats. But before we move into that, did you want to comment on 3-strike rule?
Yeah, it just goes back to the whole slow to hire, quick to fire. But this is actually giving them 60 days. So you give them 30 days to turn it around, and you give them another 30 days. That's strike 1. Strike 2, you give them another 30 days. And then strike 3, it's not working out. And what Gino's thought process behind that is, if you've given them 60 days and they haven't changed, they're not gonna. Right. So, and then he cited numerous examples that I remember where once you've let that person go, the vendors and the other employees are like, oh my God. Yeah. They're not gonna necessarily complain about them to you directly unless it's just an egregious, mistake or something. If they're just kind of annoying or whatever, they're just not, they don't want to come across, your employees don't want to come across as a complainer or whatever. But what if you do let them go, it was striking that how many times in his examples they were, oh thank God, didn't want to tell you, but Right.
Yeah, all right. So again, we broke up this chapter, the people component, into the right people in the right seats. So let's talk about the right seats. which for me, as I read through it, was really kind of broken up into three little minor sections, which were he references another book where the author sort of coined and trademarked the person's unique ability. Mm-hmm. And then next is the accountability chart, and then what he labels as the GWC, which means you get it, you want it, and you have the capacity to do it, GWC. So unique ability. I've always been a big believer that if you are operating and doing what you have an innate God-given gift and talent and an ability, when you're operating out of that, you have an unlimited amount of energy and passion to do it because it's just in you to do that. Right. So, I mean, that when I heard that phrase, that's what it triggered for me. How about you?
The unique ability?
Yeah.
Yes. What, building off of what you said, it would be what sets you apart from the pack.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then the next thing is, okay, if you take the right person and you have them in the accountability chart, which he kind of, sort of diagrams out, and, he's correct to point out that in the accountability chart, there's been hundreds of books that have diagrammed a organizational chart, and this is just one of his that his model that fits in with the whole VTO and the entire EOS system.
Right.
So he broke it up into an organizational chart where sort of the core people who are operating in the seats, broken up into three buckets: sales and marketing, operations, and finance.
Right.
What do you think about those? As you work with a lot of businesses, you do accounting.
It's 100% that. It's 100% that. And the way I see it is I see it as sales and marketing and basically the admin function, which is, he calls it finance, but it's basically the admin function of your business. The HR, the IT, the finances, everything that it takes to actually run your business is one bucket. Sales and marketing is one bucket, and then operations. So that may be where you're producing something, or it may be, as in our case, client services. And there's really, you can break those down into subsets, but those are really the three functions. And so what I like about his model versus the organizational, just a traditional organizational chart, the organizational chart, the accountability chart is like an organizational chart on steroids. So it's showing who's in that bucket or that square and what they do. Right. So you're listing kind of out over to the side, what is it that these people do to ensure that those job duties aren't being repeated somewhere else. So that it's one person, one job. And so what he mentions in the book is that sometimes when we do this exercise, we realize we have three people in one box. And that can be a place of blockage. Now, I just wanted to talk briefly, if you don't mind, about our experience, because we've done this. So my team actually, hunkered down and did our accountability chart. And for all the perfectionists out there, do not get mired in this. I wanted to show my accountability chart, which I don't know if you can really see.
We'll see.
If you can see, it's on loose leaf paper and it's hand scribbled.
Right.
So, but what I love about it is that you have to take a high view at it, and you're supposed to look at how you want it to look 5-10 years down the line. And when we created ours, we were able to create it in such a manner that we can easily scale up as we get bigger. And so that was one of the things that was just like an aha for us, and also allowed us to see where people are in multiple boxes and how to eventually move them into, because we're still small. We're still small. So I'm going to be in 5 different boxes right now. But now I know I've got a very discrete box, and I know once I've outgrown that I've got to fill that spot. And now I almost have like a built-in job description for what that that box is.
Sure.
So I really, really like that. I highly recommend everyone doing this if you don't have a clear, defined organizational chart or accountability chart for your business right now.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that he brought up, he gives a couple of examples of a business who had the right people, but they were in the wrong seat.
Yeah.
Right. And
yeah.
so, basically he illustrated the point of that person was basically, when they sat down with them and said, look, what your unique ability is, you're not working in that. And that really matches better with this other seat, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
They moved them into that seat. Someone else took the role that they did, and things really started to hum along. And I think that, as he says, a lot of times what happens with older companies is people have been there longer, they start to move up the ladder, they go into management roles, but maybe they're not really a manager.
Right.
And then that's when you have that situation where you have the right person in the wrong place. Like they may have been great salesmen or marketers, but they're not directors of communications, or they're not general managers, and so they need to, and then they need to make that move. So I thought that was really cool. Going into the get it, want it, and capacity to do it, I think that, that's really important. I mean, obviously, if you get it, you truly understand what your role is, you truly understand what the culture is, which is based on your core values. You want it, like you literally want to do it. I mean, those are pretty self-explanatory. And then of course the capacity. Do you have the mental, physical, basic,
the hours,
and the hours to do it, right? So all of that into one. So I thought that was great. Okay, so good. Now the next thing that he gets into, which is sort of the piece that puts all of this together in the framework, is he talks about the integrator and the visionary. And I know you and I have had a lot of talks about this, especially with our business structure and the integrator. And I'll just kind of surmise what I pulled away from that is the integrator is really responsible for the day-to-day operations. They are the glue that makes the business stay together. Whereas the visionary might be the founder. They have like 10 different ideas a day. They're very creative. They do a lot of R&D. They are about big relationship development with other vendors, and are often very involved in business development for the company.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what I kind of boiled it down to.
Yeah. To me, and he doesn't mention it, but the way I vision it is like the CEO and the COO. So the integrator is the one that's kind of bridging the gaps between the departments, so between sales and operations, or between sales and admin, and just making sure that they're all running smoothly in the way they're supposed to. So they're helping in that capacity, but they're also the one that takes the visionary's ideas and makes it happen. So they're the ones that the visionary can bounce ideas off of and can kind of weed out. Because he mentions they'll come up with 10 ideas a day, of which only one is any good. Right. And so if you've got that person that understands the entire business and can translate the idea and say, that's not going to work because of this and this and this, it helps it frees up the CEO to move on to different ideas. Or if the CEO has nailed an idea, they're going to get excited together, and then that is what they call rocket fuel. That's just going to launch, the new creative ideas into the business. And so I feel like it's a really great partnership, and I'm super excited to get an integrator. Because
you're wearing both hats right now.
Right now I have both. Right now I'm having to do both, and it's really tough because my heart is with the visionary. If I could be in the visionary role all day long, I'd be the happiest person ever, but nothing would get done and we'd have no money. So so I do have to step into that integrator role. But that was the big piece that came out of this year's, for us setting up an accountability chart was, wow, the next box we need to fill is the integrator role. So that's what we're actively going after. And it's actually one of our rocks for this year. So
that's great.
Yeah.
I think when you put all this together, when you have the right people in the right place and you have them, right people, right seats, you have your accountability chart in place. And again, we understand that accountability chart is dynamic, right? It's not set in stone. It can have multiple tiers as your business begins to grow and scale and evolve, and as trends and different things happen that impact your business. But the fact that you've got a core structure so that when disruption comes or change comes or financial, if there's a major market correction that impacts your business, you've got a core function, you've got a core structure in place. And I think that's what I find extremely attractive and just makes sense to have that kind of structure in place. So Chapter 4 was really great. I think it pulled together a lot of things that we have been kind of working on through the previous chapters.
Right.
And I really enjoyed it. Any last things that you wanted to talk about for that chapter?
I don't think so. Okay. I was wondering what the next one is.
Yeah, so the next time we get together, which is next Friday, I believe, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so next Friday we're going to talk about Chapter 5, the data component, and we'll dig deeper into that. Guys, thank you so much for your time. My name is Michael Winn. I am the Chief Digital Officer of Digital Ops, a division of RB Oppenheim Associates. Thank you, Katie Lilly, for joining today.
My pleasure.
All right. Hey, you guys, have a great, happy, Good Friday and a wonderful Easter weekend. We'll see you next Friday.